Thank you for being here, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate it very much. I also want to thank you in your written testimony for mentioning the crisis in Venezuela. I wanted to talk about that briefly. As you know, they had elections about a year ago in Venezuela where there was credible reports of irregularities, but even leading up to the election, the government controls all the modes of communication, denying the opposition airtime, meanwhile dominating the airtime for the government. Of course, the government there has invested heavily in these armed militias called colectivos, which are basically these neighborhood groups armed by the government who go out intimidating and, in fact, shooting and killing protesters in the current protests that are going on. They've jailed members of the opposition. They control the courts. About 90% of the judges in Venezuela, or a significant percentage of the judges in Venezuela, serve on a provisional basis, which means at any point they could be removed by President Maduro if he chose to do so. In fact, they recently removed a member of their National Assembly because she, according to them, had the gall of appearing at the Organization of American States and traveling abroad to condemn what is happening within that country. In addition, as you're well aware, in July of 2009, the General Accounting Office found that the so-called Bolivarian National Guard, the Venezuelan National Guard, is deeply involved in the trafficking of illicit narcotics. And as you know, our government has significant concerns about senior Venezuelan government officials being involved as well in transnational criminal activities, including people like Mr. Hugo Carvajal, Mr. Henry Rangel Silva, the former defense minister and now is the governor of Trujillo State, Mr. Tariq El Assami, who is the governor of Aragua State, a congressman by the name of Freddy Bernal, and last but not least, the president of their own Congress, Mr. Diosdado Cabello. All of these are people we have concerns about in terms of their engagement in transnational criminal activity. So here's my question. Why can't we just say what is obvious to anyone who sees these facts, that the government of Venezuela is not and does not comport itself as a democracy, and in fact, because of all of these activities and others, and violence against their own people, have lost the legitimacy of a government? Are we prepared to say that as a matter of stated policy of the United States?
Senator, first of all, let me thank you for and congratulate you for your leadership on this, because it is important. I appreciate enormously the clear message in Senate Resolution 365 that deplores the repression and the violence against the people of Venezuela. And we've spoken out against it and criticized their ridiculously contrived attacks on us as somehow being engaged in doing things that we haven't been engaged in, and so forth. Right now, we're very supportive of third-party mediation efforts that are aimed at trying to end the violence and see if we can't get an honest dialogue to address the legitimate grievances of people in Venezuela. Even as we're sitting here today, I think the UNASUR delegation is meeting in Caracas, and for the first time, the government and the opposition is going to be meeting today as we meet here. So this is a very delicate time in the possibility of a negotiation, and I don't think we should, I don't want to, do something today that provides cannon fodder for them to use me or us as an excuse to say this is why they have to do things or something.
Yeah, and I understand that concern. I mean, my bigger concern is that our interest in stability, which is what the hope of this negotiation would be, somehow takes precedent over our stated foreign policy of standing always on the side of liberty, freedom, democracy, respect for human rights, all of which are being systematically abused by this government. I think it's important for the people in Venezuela to know that the United States condemns these acts of violence that are going on and all the other things that I've mentioned. And I just don't understand why we can't look to this and say, by the way, just because you had an election does not make you a democracy. There are other aspects of democracy, and this government in Venezuela does not behave like a democracy.
They are putting that to the test. There's no question about it, Senator, and I don't disagree with you. We have spoken out. I've issued statements personally. I called the foreign minister some time ago to weigh in. We've had our people, as you know, on the ground speaking out. So I don't think there's any question for the people of Venezuela where we stand. The question is there a way to protect those people and earn for them the ability to be able to get out of jail, express their rights in the political process, and fight for the future of their country. I think let's let this meeting take place. Let's see what happens, and there's time for you and me and others to work on this and see if we have to go a different road forward.
I have one more question about another part of the hemisphere. Last summer, the Cuban regime was caught smuggling over 240 tons of weapons to North Korea in violation of international law. The United Nations has confirmed this. In fact, it's the largest interdiction of weapons to or from North Korea since the UN sanctions were imposed. What has been the United States' reaction to that? What have we done in reaction to this violation of UN sanctions?
We are working directly with the DPRK Sanctions Committee at the UN in order to ensure a vigorous response, to shine a light on this activity, and to get accountability for what has happened. In our dialogue with them, we've thus far focused on the individuals who have been involved in this and the entities involved in it. So in March, along with like-minded states, we pushed to make the panel of experts report public on the incident that was released. It's the first time the panel of experts report has been made public since June of last year. And we have made clear that this violates the sanctions, and Cuba's interpretation of the UN Security Council resolution is incorrect. So we intend to review the results of the UN process and try to see if we can get a united multilateral response.
Would you agree that this evidence that's now out there before the public is strong evidence of the fact that Cuba remains a state sponsor of terrorism?
Well, in this sense, they've exported weapons, and that certainly would contribute to that judgment. But in other respects, it's a question, it still doesn't fit the legal definition, Senator, but you and I, in a common sense point of view, would say this is...
What about holding an American hostage like Mr. Alan Gross? Would that...
That's, it's an act of personal terror. It's not international terrorism under the sense of the definition that fits for the designation. I will tell you that I think just today, Alan Gross announced that he's going to engage in a hunger strike. We are deeply involved in this. I met with his family just a few weeks ago, a month ago or so. We have a number of efforts underway, which I'd be happy to talk to you about privately. But we are very, very focused on trying to get Alan Gross out of there. His treatment is inhumane, and he is wrongfully imprisoned.
Mr. Secretary, let me just add on, selling weapons to North Korea in violation of Security Council resolutions, the only country in the Western Hemisphere, the largest such violation of the Security Council resolution by any country, is, in my view, a pretty significant terrorist act. But